Shalom, everyone, and welcome back. As we all know, there's a terrible conflict going on in the world today between Russia and Ukraine. And I'd like to give a little perspective about the Ukraine and Russia, especially from a Jewish perspective for those who are not that familiar. The Ukraine very often went back and forth between Russian possession, and Polish possession. And the cities of the Ukraine were quite often back and forth. Some years they were part of Russia, and other times they were part of Poland, and sometimes they're part of other countries as well, such as Hungary and Romania. So Ukraine had a very sordid background. Ukraine was the place that the Hasidic movement started in the 1700s in a place called the Carpathian Mountain region. In fact, to this day, Ukraine is spotted by tremendous places of great Hasidic importance, cities and towns where great Hasidic dynasties lived, such as Medzebuz, where the Baal Shem Tov lived, Mezrich, where the Maggid of Mezrich, Berdichev, where the great Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev lived, Liozna of Elimelech Levazinsk and Reb Anapoli and Reb Zusha of Anapoli, and so on. So many of these places, they were all in the Ukraine. In fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was born in the Ukraine, in the town of Nikolaev. To this day, the Ukraine has Jewish centers all over the world, all over the place. And Chabad is in the forefront of establishing centers everywhere in all the towns and villages that we read about, Kharkov, Odessa, Kiev, and so many of the other places are all places where Chabad has reestablished strong Jewish life there. But it was not always like that. The Ukraine also has a very sordid history of anti Semitism. During World War II, the Ukrainian National Guard, or the Red Guard, was known to be particularly cruel. They were collaborators with the Nazis, and many people felt that they were even worse than the Nazis in their cruelty to the Jews. The Ukrainian people are not known particularly as the friendliest people to the Jewish people, and they've shown it many anti-Semitic incidences and the history throughout their history. However, things are different today. Ukraine today has a Jewish president. Zelensky is Jewish. He is the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, and there is quite a different mood in the Ukraine today regarding the Jewish people. There are something like 380,000 Jews who live throughout the Ukraine today, and the mood is much more positive towards the Jews, much more less anti-Semitism than there used to be, although it still exists to a certain degree as well. Russia is also very similar. The Russian uh, territory has also gone back and forth through many generations in different places. Some places were part of Poland, and etc., and sometimes part of Russia. And we know the history of the Russian people, the Russian czars, and how cruel they were. And the Russians have a history of cruelty, whether it was in the past wars or throughout the years with the czars of Russia. If you only take a look at Fiddler on the Roof, and the prayer that they asked the rabbi to give to the czar, and the rabbi said, "May God keep the czar far away from us." So Russia has not been particularly our friend either. However, in more modern times, Russia has been a great friend of Israel. The Russian president has been very close to the Jewish community in Russia, and very helpful in reestablishing the Jewish centers and synagogues throughout Russia. He's been very helpful towards us. So it's a very mixed bag of good and bad, of good history and not so good history. And but we find ourselves today in a situation where Russia is clearly the aggressor, and Russia is attacking Ukraine, and we need to support Ukraine as best as we can and the people of the Ukraine to hope and pray that there will be no casualties, or the casualties will be very low, and this war should be very soon over. In fact, perhaps the lesson that we can learn from it is that people can change, both for the good and for the bad. That's human nature. And human nature tells us that sometimes to be on one side of history one year, will be on the other side of history the other year. And indeed, this time Ukraine is on top, and Ukraine requires our sympathy and our support. And we hope and pray that this conflict will soon be over, and the world can resume back to a state of peace. This is the month of Adar. The month of Adar, we say Mishanichnas Adar Marbin Besimcha, that when Adar comes, happiness and joy increases. This year there are two Adars, so there's double the amount of Simcha, double the amount of happiness. Adar is the month of Purim, and we're going to be celebrating Purim in just 2 more weeks, not even 2 more weeks. And we hope that by then the conflict will be over, and the Jews in Russia and the Jews in Ukraine will be able to celebrate as never before with happiness and joy. And they should only look back on this as a terrible blotch on their history. And we should hope and pray that it should be over soon. Candlelighting in San Diego is at 5:31. I'd be interested in hearing your viewpoints about this conflict and about the Jewish angle to the conflict. Please let me know your feelings as well. We'll be happy to post them. Shalom, and have a good week and a good Shabbos.